What is emotional intelligence?
Two ways in which kids learn emotional intelligence. One is through stories and the other is through play. I'll never forget, I was at the Singapore airport. We were coming back from a holiday, and this is one kid sitting screaming. Okay, this kid is screaming and howling. Both the parents were sitting like this in front, just staring at the kid, weren't saying a word. All parents in the airport got it. All the non-parents were like, what is going on? But that kid at some point, I think about 5 minutes later, stopped, and then they spoke to him. I think that's the thing. Let the emotion go by. You know, emotions are like this, like they go up like waves, they also come down. So just wait for that wave to go down. Then have that conversation. Right? When something happens to us, we feel a certain emotion. What tends to happen is that if you don't know how to regulate that emotion, which is basically almost like think of a fan regulator, right? You turn it, it's turned up, how do you kind of bring it down? If you don't learn that, you are letting your emotion drive your decisions and your behavior. The simplest level, what emotional intelligence allows you to do is to help you make better decisions that are based on thought rather than emotion. But what you're innately teaching your child is how do you build a better relationship with your own self.
Yes.
You know, if you are not trying to fool yourself, and most times we are the easiest people to fool. You know, we fool ourselves all the time.
Ourselves all the time.
Because men don't express. And I feel that's the thing. What eats away most men is the inability to get themselves to express their emotions. And because they can't express their emotions, they hold it all in. It's like slow cancer. It kind of eats away at them slowly.
Yeah.
If you understand who you are, then you learn how to manage yourself better. Once you manage yourself better, then you can look out at the world and you will see people and without that filter, which means you'll be more socially aware. You have social awareness. I feel fatherhood for me is about just being there when your kid needs you.
Varun, thank you so much for coming back.
Yeah, I'm happy to do this in person finally.
I know, it was great to do this in person, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I've realized how much more fun it's to do it in person. And I still remember, just like yesterday, when we were chatting over a weird virtual thingy. And I don't know if you know, you're actually the first guest of my show.
I have a vague recollection that you said that when we recorded it. Yeah.
It's incredible. Yeah. So thank you for doing this on a weekend. I know we preach no work weekends and we're doing this on a weekend. No, I appreciate that.
I've realized that Saturdays are a great time to do these conversations. You're not doing end of days when you get tired and you also want to rush back home. Saturdays, even the kids want to go do their thing. So they've given me the afternoon off.
That's good. For a cause. All right. We'll just go into a few topics, but one thing that I'm curious to dig in with you, given your work in the recent times, is emotional intelligence in children. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's one thing that being an HR professional, we're trying to do a lot, even in the workplace, and it's a very, very long journey. The fact that you are trying to instill this topic in children is a massive mission and huge, long vision. And first of all, I congratulate you for that, and we'll dig into that. So my first question is, how did you first kind of realize the importance of this in children?
So I'll take a step back, right? We've all worked in corporate environments, in larger organizations, and the things you struggle with are never necessarily the IQ related stuff.
Yep.
It's not the technical expertise, because that stuff you learn. What you struggle with is, conflict management, making decisions. You're struggling with how to work together as a team.
Work with others,
So many of those aspects, right? But again, that stuff you say you only learn when you get into work. And it's almost one of those things they say you will learn as life progresses. This is how you are always told this.
Right.
So these, I think sometimes things converge, and that's where this happened. Early pandemic, my wife Pooja, she was CEO, she was on a bunch of boards, and she would always come back and say that, why is there such a lack of emotional intelligence in rooms that people just can't find ways to work together? And it's always so much conflict in these meetings and stuff. And I was doing these podcasts that I was talking to people from across the spectrum, and they were all like, I would always ask them, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were a kid? And everybody would say things like how to have confidence, how to make better decisions, how to have better social and relationship skills. Nobody said, I wish I knew algebra better. Right. Or nobody said, I wish trigonometry was taught better.
Well, that stuff is never taught in schools.
Yeah.
Right?
And the question was, why isn't it taught? And at the same time, our daughter was going through 1.5 years, our first 1.5 years of school, which is nursery and junior kindergarten, on an iPad.
Right.
Because it was the pandemic. And we saw how much she was struggling. We saw that kids had, and they were like starting backwards because we all have learned these because we were playing with other kids.
We're running into other kids, fighting with them.
And we also I feel we all grew up in a much more social world in physical form than these kids do, because they're all living in bubbles. They go from a bubble, which is their building, to a bubble, which is their school. And we saw that she was struggling with that. I saw so many other kids were struggling with it. And one day I remember Pooja was talking to another mother, and the mom said, school's preparing these kids for work. I have to prepare them for life, but I don't know how to. And so these things kind of came together, and all the dots are aligning, and we were sitting down and saying, is there something we really want to build? Because we were, when we just exited Glitch, we were sitting, and thinking, is this retirement? Are we doing something else in life? Are we going to do something? We hadn't had a second kid yet as well. Yeah. And then we said, is there something to this? Let's dig into it a little bit. And instinct was, let's go content. Because that's what
you guys have done, yeah.
So as we dug into the research, we realized that there are two ways in which kids learn emotional intelligence. One is through stories and the other is through play. And when those align, and so kids can consume something as a story, then they play act the same things, and then they go out and practice in real life. And that's how you kind of hone those skills. Right? Any skill, you consume, you practice, and then you go put it out there. And some of this skill, which is so important to all of us, even having conversations, what we're doing right now, it's always assumed we will learn it. And so it was that journey to kind of, as the deeper we dug into it, we found social emotional learning as a framework that schools were trying to do. We went even deeper and said, okay, what are the institutes in the world kind of teaching that? So, we found an institute, which was the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, wrote to them. They sent us links to all the publicly available information because they work with public schools in America, and they said, okay, these are things you can use. And the further we went, we said, once again, this is still, it's there in schools, but it's not there in a space where a parent can take it and say, I can help my kid by giving them this. And that's where it that's the longer process of getting to where we are now.
Got it. That's fascinating. And I couldn't agree more. I was talking to the counselor in my kid's school. Same thing. So, kids coming to her to talk about problems. And it's always about, she's not talking to me and this and that. It's all about that. But for an average parent, right? I mean, this word itself can be a little bit complex and alienating. So how do you describe this to parents? What is emotional intelligence?
So let's look at a simple scenario in our lives. Right? When something happens to us, we feel a certain emotion. What tends to happen is that if you don't know how to regulate that emotion, which is basically almost like think of a fan regulator, right? You turn it, it's turned up, how do you kind of bring it down? If you don't learn that, you are letting your emotion drive your decisions and your behavior. But if you learn to regulate it, if you learn to understand it, your behavior is based on actual thought, you analyzing it, putting any action into play. The simplest level, what emotional intelligence allows you to do is to help you make better decisions that are based on thought rather than emotion. At the base level, that's what it is. But to get there, you have to go through a process of a few things. You have to first learn how you work, how your emotions work.
You as a dad or a mom, as an individual. It could be anyone.
Okay. Any individual. Right? You got to understand, you have emotional awareness. Okay, these are things that make you feel anxious. These are things that make me get angry. And we all are different, right? You see any individual in the world, they all function differently. And think of young kids. Let's take an example of a 2-year-old kid. A 2-year-old kid will tend to throw things, throw massive tantrums, and they call it the edible tools. That's because the kid hasn't learned how to say things, because they're going through this, okay, I want to say something. I don't have the language.
But I don't know how the tools,
I don't have the language. I don't have the tools to control myself. So it's just an outburst. So I'll throw stuff. I will shout. But you sit them down and you give them almost a way to manage that. So one great tactic, right, is something called co-regulation. So I have a 2-year-old and he really has moments when he goes like,
sure.
So actually sit down, sit at eye level, look at him in the eye, and I put my hand on his chest and almost like talk to him in a calm tone.
Yep.
So when you do that, when you are calm and you almost had physical contact, the other person, especially a child,
energy level.
brings it down.
Yep.
So will they stop having a tantrum? No, they'll still cry, all that will happen. But suddenly the energy level comes down to the energy you want it to be, right? Gives them time to do it. And just smaller things like that. And now imagine this. Imagine someone, not 2-year-old, but like a 30-year-old who's having this big blowout.
Yeah, big feeling.
And doesn't know how to do it, which you see so often, right?
Yeah.
You see that
I mean, we're all basically kids. They just look bigger.
Who have no idea how to do these things, right? Even a simple breath helps you. And when you connect all these together, if you understand the science behind it, and there's a language to emotions, the big, I think the internal conversation we always have is that we've learned A for apple.
Just put a label to it.
But we haven't heard A for angry. Like,
Right.
how do you define angry? Like if I ask you today, define angry to me in like 1 or 2 sentences, what would you say?
I'll struggle to start with. I mean, I'm mad or whatever.
Yeah.
Then that doesn't tell you anything.
Yeah.
So
So
feeling like a surge of things happening inside my body, right? It's hard to define.
So when you're angry and I'm fascinated when I talk to young kids. I did a session the other day with like 7-8-year-olds and we were talking about conflict management. And I showed them this video about explaining a boundary to a child. And they're like, yeah, we know personal space. And I'm like, this is a 7-year-old kid who's saying, I know personal space. I think I heard the word personal space in my late 30s,
Just a
early
couple
40s.
of years back.
And so I said, think of your personal space, which is basically the space around you, and for some of us, the space is less. Some of it is more.
Yeah.
Some of us allow many people, many things inside that,
into
allow
space.
many things to happen. Some of us like, no, I will control what's in that space. If someone breaks your rules inside that space or comes inside without asking you first, that's when you feel angry. I think someone's broken my rules. Because your body immediately, emotions are a signal. When an emotion spikes, it's like something's wrong here.
Yep.
Right? You have your amygdala kind of at the back end kind of jump up like your monkey mind and say, something's wrong here.
Yeah, it's a fight or flight response.
Yeah. And if you learn to, in that moment, say, okay, one second, I'll take a deep breath. Let me just think about this, not react immediately. Suddenly moving control from there, you move into the prefrontal cortex. And at that point of time, you are thinking logically, okay, 1 second, this isn't something to have a heavy emotion about. And you think more logically. And so I was actually teaching these kids something called firefighter breath, which was really fun. I was like, imagine you're a firefighter and take this deep breath of 1, 2, 3, and you hold it in for 3 seconds. You're like this for 3 seconds, and then you're putting a fire out. And the kids were having fun with it. And when the class got over, I asked the kids, and we obviously did a lot more things. And I said, what did you learn today? 2 things really surprised me. One is, half the kids remembered amygdala, prefrontal cortex, monkey mind, which I didn't think they would have. I was worried about putting that in. This is too complex a term. Right. The second thing is, at least, and this is a class of about 15 kids.
These are what, second graders?
Second graders.
Yeah.
A couple of kids said that I learned that what I feel doesn't necessarily tell me how I should behave. Which I thought was such a heavy statement for a 7-year-old to say that what I feel is not necessarily how I should behave. And that's what it is. You're teaching kids these skills, which just think about like yourself and saying, I wish I knew this.
Yeah.
Most of it will be this. So I think long answer for a simple question, but you're teaching your kids essential life skills, like how to build confidence, make decisions, have conversations, build relationships. But the umbrella is basically, if you learn about your emotions, you have better social skills, and that connects to building all these.
That's phenomenal. Thanks for sharing that, because a lot of parents, do struggle with it, and there's a whole another aspect of how they are, wired, what they have gone through, and because a lot of it we mirror on our children. Depending on what our life journey has been.
I'm smiling.
Are we able to level our own emotions first? Because a lot of times we just project, and the children are picking up on that.
What you said is so interesting, right? So about 6 months ago, I was like, one second, when we started building Emomi, we had a learning consultant, we had animators, we were building product, and I was driving content and creative. So I was in between learning, and I still am between learning and product and content, right? And at some point, I'm self-learned.
Yeah.
Self-learned because I'm a parent and I'm like obviously hands-on, so you know what's going on. Self-learned also because I consume just general information about everything, and I found a great term for it. I used to call it a hoarder of information. Now I call myself an independent researcher. Somehow sounds nicer.
That definitely sounds nicer.
But I said, okay, I want to go deeper. So I found this course out of Stanford on child development and mental health. It was 6 weeks, but intensive 6 weeks, because every week you're learning newer things, but you also, you're given a case, you're giving strategies that a parent should be able to use and stuff. One of the first things we learned in that is that for a parent to teach a kid how to deal with their emotions, how to build these skills, is less about what you say, more about what you do. If they see you as a regulated person, if they see you as someone who knows how to communicate, not lose your temper, be calm, it'll just like, they absorb that. They're like a sponge.
Right.
So the first thing is actually,
to work with
while we make this for parents as a company, we realize that more and more it will be the parents who will learn, and almost like how can they transfer that to their kids. So that's so core. Like it's so much more about what you do. And because you sometimes say, no, like, don't cry right now.
Correct.
This is not a big deal. Instead, if you say that,
don't feel sad.
Even like, I can see that you're feeling something.
Right.
Do you want to talk more about it?
Right.
Immediately shows that kids are saying, when this happens, that's empathy, right? And you label it. You say, that's what empathy is. You have that conversation later. Suddenly makes the kid do that to someone else. Versus if you brush it off, you're teaching them to hide stuff. You're teaching them to hold it in.
That feeling is not valid. Yeah. Very important. Absolutely. How is your own, leaving the work that you're doing on the side? Of course, the work must have informed a lot, right? And your curiosity in understanding the space. How is first your daughter and then your son. How do you manage Meltdowns now vis-a-vis how you did 4 years back?
I think the best thing I've actually learned through doing all of this is that initially when you become a parent, you want to be perfect at it.
Right.
I do not chase perfection. I'm an imperfect parent. I'm a proud imperfect parent.
Right.
As long as I'm present when things are happening, because I've actually learned that they don't mind it when, if you lose your temper. They do mind it if you don't close the loop and if you don't sit down and say one thing. Sorry, I lost my temper. I'm apologizing to you. This is why I lost this. What's going on? Or like, don't just show them the happy moments. If if there's an argument, it's fine in front of them, but explain to them. I've just learned that being present part is so tough. I feel it's the toughest thing for all of us across age groups to do, because you'll pick up the phone, you'll walk out of the room. Just to be
it's harder as you grow older.
Because we're always like this, right? All of us are like this all the time. And you got to. My 2.5-year-old has this thing that he sees me on the phone for too long. He goes, "Papa, put no phone." Like he literally has this no phone thing.
Reaction,
Great. Like, I have a great screen time boundary builder. Like put it away. So I'll put it away. But it's just that because I've learned that there are some things which I'm still learning, and I think I'll continue to learn. I'm a lot more patient.
What are some of the things that you're learning?
I always, the problem I feel for parents is that a lot of our parenting is defined by a certain amount of guilt.
Right.
Because we all feel guilty for, I'm not spending enough time. I'm not doing enough. And it's
a huge force.
It's always there. It's back of your head. And I've had these conversations with other parents on Instagram, and they're all like, and ask them, what are you dealing with right now? I say, parental guilt. I got angry with my kid, or I said something to them. But I've realized that guilt will stay if you just hold it in, if you don't find a way to express it. So I have found that just doing simple things like being real with your kids, like just saying that, Papa needs a timeout. I need a break to do something. It's better than sitting with them but seeming exasperated.
Sitting with something,
because they notice
that's
kids see
unresolved.
Kids see that you're there and you're not really present with them. I think that's been my biggest process of learning, because I'm also someone who's constantly thinking of stuff, always wanting to do something and learn something, but your kids just want you to sit and play with their toys. They're not asking you to learn stuff. It doesn't have to be productive. You can just sit and do some stuff. So I feel that's been the process which, for me at least, to really kind of dig into and go more and more. The second thing is, I'm also not putting that pressure on myself. Like, I know for a fact that, like, I would say even like 6 months ago, if I was doing this on a Saturday afternoon, I'd be like, some guilt, like, oh, Saturday afternoons with the kids. No, I'm not. I'm like, spend Friday evening with them, spend every evening with them, spend today morning with them. They're fine. I don't think they're thinking about it. Right. It's more what's in my head. So dealing with my own self has been my biggest learning. I feel that you become a better parent if you are, I read this thing which I really stuck with me, is like, if you're a better parent to your inner child, you're a better parent for your child.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to be. You need to just think of that kid inside you and take care of that kid first, and then you can take care of your kid.
That's so true. I've been working on that myself. Guilt. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously the whole world of shame, right? All of this is kind of loaded into our hardware.
Also as dads, I feel it's so much more. Yeah. So being a dad is such a... Dad can never be a mom. I don't think that's a possibility, right? I'm so sorry you're saying, and cut you off, it just came out. I feel mothers do something which fathers never can, and I think fathers should try to. But I also feel that the role of a father is such a weird one because it's not defined.
Right.
It's very like fluid. Like sometimes my moms are like, I know I speak to many dads and they're all who are friends or like friends of friends, and they're like, no, but my wife prefers it if, I'm not doing so much. So my rule has always been, what can I do that Pooja doesn't want to do?
That compliments.
Yeah. But more than that is also like, because there's no expectations, you are either at some point, if you're doing something and somebody says, oh, you're a hands-on dad, you also have major imposter syndrome because you're like, one thing, I'm not doing as much as maybe my partner is, but I'm getting all this like random praise for doing the basics.
True.
And so you're stuck in this weird loop of you don't know where your role lies, and at some point you start to come to terms with one thing, I'm just going to...
Yeah, that's sort of a gift and a curse, both.
Yeah, because it's awesome being a dad. I love being a dad. It's one of the things which I've actually feel it's made me become better. But unless you're very like thoughtful about not making that like one of those crutches, right? It shouldn't be a barrier to doing things. It shouldn't become a barrier to your own like
your own pursuits, your own self. That's so rightly put, because it speaks to me. Because I might have gone to the other extreme of feeling that guilt, because you programmed for guilt, and now the guilt is applying on this parenting role.
Yeah.
And I realized that sometimes my need to do something for children, to your point, actually it's not required now. I might be compensating for something else that I need to work on.
Yeah.
And I have to sort that out inside, right? That's what you're talking about, right?
Because think about it. What do you remember about your own parents, fathers especially, when you were growing up, right? You'll only remember the times when you really wanted them to be around.
Right.
And they were there or weren't there.
Correct.
I don't think you really remember, were they there all the time with me? Or if were there specific rituals that you repeated so often? Because I knew I had a bunch of those with my dad when I was growing up, and I talked to him about it sometimes. And I know I focused on having those with my daughter, and now with my son as well.
Yeah.
So like just simple things like I pick her up from her bed every morning and we say hello to the world together. It still continues. She's getting bigger and bigger to carry, but I'm still doing that. My son and I do not have that. He and I have a very different thing, because he wakes up in the morning with the energy of like 10,000 volts, and he's jumping out of bed and
he just gets launched.
Right? So for him and me, it's really about I call it. We have a dirty diaper time. So basically he wakes up with his diaper obviously filled up, and I'm like, dirty diaper. So you have this like whole thing, got to get the dirty diaper out scenario. So it's like a mission to get the dirty diaper out in the morning, and it's just fun for us. And I give both my kids a bath in the morning before they go to school. That's one of those things I enjoy being able to do as long as I can.
Yeah.
As long as I should rather. But just some of those things, like put them to bed, be there, and like son likes to sleep here in the night, and he finds this to be a spot that relaxes him. Put him to bed while sleeping here, and then slink off.
Yeah.
So I think it's just that you got to find those things. It's like like I said, ritual. You do it again and again and again. It gets embedded, and the kid will remember those, and hopefully not remember the things which times when you weren't there.
Yeah, yesterday I was talking to a mom, right? My first mom guest, and she was talking exactly the same thing. She's like, I remember, I've had a great childhood. What I remember with my dad is walking on Marine Drive every Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And that's just, that was my happy place.
Yeah.
Just 1 hour in the whole week. So to your point, just have those rituals, and that's what stays, right?
Yeah. And there was this, so I've been spending a lot of time looking at studies, right? And I feel sometimes what happens is we read these psychological studies and we get more than influenced. I feel the guilt becomes more.
Right.
Oh, you have to
not doing this.
You have to be this much time with your kids. So you have that one reel which comes across everybody, which I want to just get off my algorithm, which is like, your kid, there will be a day when your kids will not be around anymore. There will be a day they will not want to spend time with you. That's the time when you'll remember this. I'm like, I don't want this reminder. I know
this is a ticking time bomb.
Yeah. So I was reading this piece that till about 2011, 96% of all psychological studies were primarily on Western subjects.
Thinking, yeah.
So US, UK, not for Africa, not for Asia, none of those. And when you think about cultural standpoints, how the Western side of the world is a lot more individualistic, right? We're very like individual, and then community comes after.
The collective, yeah.
Asian and African, we're very community first.
Yep.
So when you talk about, this is how you bring up a kid, and a lot of the stuff you read about being parents, just based on psychological studies, tend to suddenly be so based on
very Western
oriented. Yeah. And actually what kids need is a lot more community, right? They need more people. And there's this fabulous book which I'm still in the process of reading called Hunter-Gatherer Parent. Yeah. It's called Hunter-Gatherer Parent. And it talks about how if you look at tribes, you look at Eastern communities, it was not the job of two people to bring up a child. A child was brought up by
grandparents. Brought up by the village, as they say. It takes a village.
And that's the whole point, is that the whole village brought up the child.
Yeah.
And now suddenly we're in this state where it's just two parents and a child. Parents also have jobs and careers and stuff they want to pursue. And so suddenly the pressure feels like it's so much more, because that's not how kids are supposed to be brought up.
Right.
We thankfully have, Pooja's mom lives in the same building, and she comes home every day when we go to work, and thankfully that's how we've been able to do everything that we've done. But not everybody has that option.
Yeah.
And the deeper you go, you realize that in learning some of these things, what you should also remember is that what your kids really need is community. What they need is connection. What they need is the ability to learn from different sources. And when you do that, they're not being brought up with this focus on controlling everything they do. I'll control what you eat. I'll control how you play. I'll control everything. You're letting it be based on, it's based on each of you having a conversation, each of you understanding each other. You suddenly go from control to, it's a community based.
It's also one of the things that the teachings and the learnings come from very diverse sources, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not subject to like your wisdom, which is limited.
My music tastes were defined by my mom's brothers,
right?
And what they used to subject me to, or I learned some aspects of, like, my dad used to play a lot of sport, but I never played as much sport as a kid. My entire thing about reading books came from my mother. There's a certain definitive aspect of art that comes from one of my grandmothers, and so on and so forth. My grandfather was a supremely curious person, and he would always have different things and philosophies, and like he gave me a book on yoga when I was 17, which is not something you generally get from a grandparent. But he said, I'll give you a simple one in English so you'll get it. And now I think back, and I think on my kids, and I'm thankful that at least they have grandparents who are involved in their lives on a regular basis, which they learn stuff from. But it's so important to have, and we shouldn't take that away from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, shifting topic, I'm continuing to think about this from particularly men's perspective. And my curiosity is this idea of being aware of your emotions, putting a label to it, understanding what it is. What are your I know you work with a lot of parents, interact with a lot of parents and dads.
Yeah.
How are you seeing men understanding this better and better? And what would your message to dads particularly about being comfortable, understanding their own emotions, and therefore talking about it with children?
Yeah. I still think we're far off from dads figuring out this aspect.
Right.
Because I feel culturally we've been told that dads need to be strong, you need to be decisive, and
right.
you can't show emotion. Your word is there was this thing that your father's word is law and stuff like that, right? I remember hearing when you were a kid.
Right.
I feel kids don't take that part as seriously anymore. Kids know, at least now with fathers as well as mothers. I think it's like, I was watching an interview. They said that kids kind of see parents saying that this is law and they'll laugh and go off almost like it's a joke, right?
Right.
But I feel that what I feel most fathers really struggling with is that if I show my emotion, will that make me feel perceived as weak in front of my child? And what I've always said is that if your child sees you as real, as someone who makes mistakes, as someone who apologizes, that actually shows that you have courage. Shows that you can be open about things you've gotten wrong and not just things you've gotten right. And it shows them that it's this difference that we all believe that being vulnerable, and that's the tough one, right? Or be vulnerable with your child. And most of us don't understand what that word means.
Yeah, how does it work?
Just expressing your emotions is not you being vulnerable. I'm feeling really angry. Expressing emotion.
Yeah.
I'm feeling very angry because this happened, and that's
why
I felt. Is you being vulnerable? You're explaining what happened that led you to this, which is then showing a child, especially, that okay, something like this happened to me as well, and this is where it brought me. And
or I'm feeling angry because I did not behave in the way I should have behaved with that person, and now I'm feeling really bad about it. Yeah. That's vulnerability.
Yeah, right? And these are small things dads need. I don't think dads need to see this whole perception of being vulnerable makes a dad soft, makes them weak in perception. They will. This is a thing they say. Kids will spot weakness and then they will not follow it.
They'll catch you.
I feel kids understand tone better than most of us do. I have noticed that my kids know, and I have a very clear thing. I'm like, you decide the tone you're going to get. I'm a lot of fun, I'm silly, I'm all of that stuff. But at which point when you're pushing it too far, you decide you want silly papa, you want angry papa. Right? And angry papa is also not necessarily angry. Right? Like the tone gets a little sterner and they catch it. And they just need that. They need clear signals of what you're saying and why you're saying it, what you're feeling, and then they get that. And I've seen that they're so malleable to that. More than adults. I feel adults don't get it most times. I think the kids, especially with dads,
because they're all sort of wired. The wiring is done.
Yeah, and a lot of dads, I feel, are like, they're trying to find things to do with their kids. But more importantly, they're trying to find a way to have a long-term relationship with their kids. I think that's stuck on a lot of our heads, saying, will my kids still want to hang with me when I'm older? Or, just smaller things like that. And I feel that if a kid sees you express yourself, if a kid sees that you are open to hearing them, not just try to always tell them what to do. When a kid has a problem, for instance, right? This is one of the things which really changed how I look at things, because I've always been this person when somebody has a problem, be it a friend, marriage, in any relationship before that as well. There was a problem, like maybe you could do this, was my first response. Right?
Just to get to solution.
Yeah, get a solution. Right? I know you're feeling something, let's work towards solution. Right? Just brush past the feeling. And especially the kid who's really going through something, if you say, oh no, why didn't you do this? They'll lose it even further.
Right.
But if you actually sit down and say, one second, I know you're going through something. I'm here if you need me. Just go through the process. So, and that takes a lot. Like you might have a kid rolling on the floor in a public space,
just hold yourself.
Screaming.
Right.
Just don't do anything. I'll never forget, I was at the Singapore airport. We were coming back from a holiday, and this one kid sitting and screaming. This kid is screaming and howling. Both the parents were sitting like this in front, just staring at the kid. Weren't saying a word. That went on, and I could notice that all parents in the airport got it.
Just getting edgy.
All the non-parents were like, "What is going on?" But that kid, at some point, I think about 5 minutes later, stopped. And then they spoke to. I think that's the thing. Let the emotion go by. Emotions are like this. Like they go up like waves, they also come down. So just wait for that wave to go down. Then have that conversation. But also, don't make your kid believe that because they're having a heavy emotion, you're not with them anymore. They need to learn that your love is not subjective to their behavior.
Right.
But their behavior has consequences. And there's a difference between that. And I've learned to say that. And we don't say that enough, right? We're saying that because the kid will say, oh, you're angry with me, that means you don't love me. Like, no, my love doesn't change. My love is not subjective to what you say or do. But your consequences will be subjective to that. And the more you say it again, and your kid won't get the first time, won't get the second time, might take years. Just keep drilling that in. And that just makes that relationship a lot stronger. Like, your kid won't be scared of when something really bad happens. They'll still come running to you. They'll not run away. Oh no, dad will find out. He'll get angry with me.
This is not going to be welcome.
Yeah. Because like consequences will happen, but I will not suddenly stop loving you, or I will not suddenly not like you, or not want to hang with you, or not want to sit with you. I'm just going to tell you that you did this. This has a consequence, and I'm here to support you if you need me for that. And it takes a lot of patience. I think that's the one thing, right? As a parent, and I know that you'll relate. You have now slightly older kids, so you totally relate to it.
No, I do it in different
ways.
Patience
is like the number one thing you learn,
and I think the idea of just balancing love and boundaries, right? Authority and love, that's the hard one, and we swing to either, right? I've been guilty of just like not being very authoritative at times, which is also not good. But like to your point, like you see a lot of these westernized thinking that let them just do whatever they're doing, and you just have to hang back. Maybe it doesn't work in some of our cultures, right? So
this is one of the earliest things I learned was something called it's called the biopsychosocial method, right? Is that for every person there are biological factors, there's psychological factors, and there's social factors.
Okay.
So we're all born with certain biology, right? It defines how our body works, and most of it is genetic. And those, like, just from energy levels, stamina, some of those things come to us biologically. The psychological ones are like how our cognitive skills are, or just general, what are the emotional regulation skills you're born with. Like, I know for a fact, if both my kids have a fall, they'll have dramatically different reactions to it. One of them will just get up, brush off and walk, and the other one will now have that as a conversation point for the next 1 week. Right? The third thing is crucial, and we don't give it enough focus, is the social. The culture you grow up in. The culture in your home, the culture in your community. The culture in the country or the area you grow up in defines how you look at things, right? So India is a very shame-driven society.
Yes.
Right. Shame is very. We grew up now, they have no shame. Yeah. It's a common thing we threw shame around, right? But shame is like one of the most triggering emotions to have. So if you're driven by shame, then you are questioning every action based on other people's judgment.
Yes.
And I'm not saying India is the only shame-driven society. I feel that we've made it very publicly. Our use of shame is the most colloquial.
You should be ashamed of this.
Shameless fellow. Right? It's the most instinctive thing to say, right?
And we may not mean it, but we just use that.
We use it so much. Yeah. And I always thought about, okay, why do we use it so much? And I also feel it might have actually come from, let's say, colonial rule. It's a very British thing, right? It's a very Brit thing to say it's shame and dignified. And so I think it might have
come from the religion of Christianity.
Yeah. So it's obviously seeped in through all those years. But what I've actually found super interesting is that if you look at the cultural context, as Indians, we don't have boundaries.
No.
I don't think culturally it's there. Like, look at how any aspect of our culture works. So boundaries are I was talking to a psychologist once, and she said India has no boundaries. She's like, I can't tell if you tell a parent that no, you can't walk into your kid's room in India, they'll say, what do you mean? Right? An American kid gets to like lock their door and keep it that way, and it's fine. An Indian kid, parents like, why you lock your door? What are you doing inside? Right? They can ask that question. It's a simple difference. And so we got to keep cultural aspects in mind. So a kid today understands safe space because like 1 second, I still have a say, but knowing the culture you're from and how people are, and we're all huggers. Our festivals involve people coming together, and like think of Holi, think of any.
Again, and going back to, we are a collectivistic society. We're not an individualistic society.
So your definition of boundary changes. Your definition could almost be, this is stuff I'm okay with, stuff I'm not okay with. Being vocal about that versus saying no, I can have my own space. And so I feel that's where it gets lost. I feel that one aspect of just cultural understanding. Again, because we're driven by so much, like, we have Western insights thrown at us all the time. So you got to keep going back to the filter.
That's the challenge of the day. Again, I was talking to this mom yesterday, and we have this big tradition behind us, and we have these Western reels coming at us. How do you reconcile these two things?
Yeah, it's a really tough one. You got to just go through. I feel that, and I've learned this from my mother. My mom, I give her credit because I think she started my journey into so many things, and it was initially giving me books to read, and then got me into that, and I lost that habit in between and got back into it in my late 30s again. The second thing was that I was always like, so religion to me is a very personal experience. Right? Yep. So for me, it's like, so she taught me a prayer, which I've said every night before going to sleep since I was like 4 or 5 years old, and I'm 42. So it's been going on for years, and I still do it. And it's not something which anybody ever hears me say out loud. I say it internally. I do my hands. I do it in bed before I go to sleep. And she told me once, like, don't confuse spirituality with religion. And she introduced me to just breathing as an exercise and some aspects of pranayama, etc. And I realized that 1 second, I think the connective tissue is that if you only go surface level on everything, then you will just pick the word boundary and say, oh, this is what it is. But if you go deeper and say, 1 second, we all need some amount of space around us to just kind of also, we're so much about spirituality in terms of meditation, right? You can only meditate if you have a boundary.
Right.
You can't meditate in community, as in like hugging each other. You can meditate together in a community, but you have to have some boundary around you.
Right.
And for me, that's the way. So you have to define them, keeping cultural context in mind, but you have to go a little deeper. That requires you to also want to dig deeper and learn a little bit more and understand that. Like we have Vipassana as a practice, right? I'm scared. I want to do it. But I'm a person who talks all the time. I'm like, how am I going to do it?
Right.
But again, imagine this, you're sitting in a space where you are not talking to anyone. Largely, I think, if I remember right, no eye contact as well for large amounts of time. But I know I have friends, and my mom's done this many times, who come out of it feeling so refreshed. But again, you have almost like restricted yourself to having none of those interactions. So almost like you're resetting that boundary for yourself and that's personal space. So we actually have it culturally, but we just have it in a very different way. It's a lot more spiritual than it is maybe psychological, if you want to call it that. So we just have to find those. And I feel that you'll find, I think we have a lot here which might have even inspired other aspects of science and culture.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing, taking away from you is, it's all these influences coming. Going back to your point on being present, because if you are actually there, you might realize that just applying that one thing that you saw on that reel is not applicable there. You're seeing something else happening. So you can make the judgment there and trust your judgment. And if it doesn't work out, then going back to your imperfection.
Not everything works for everyone. Right? You can tell meditate every day, journal every day, teach kids all these skills. But what you're innately teaching your child is how do you build a better relationship with your own self.
Yes.
And the day you have a better relationship, if you understand yourself, if you are not trying to fool yourself, and most times we are the easiest people to fool. We fool ourselves all the time.
We trick ourselves all the time.
If you understand who you are, then you learn how to manage yourself better. Once you manage yourself better, then you can look out at the world and you will see people without that cloud and without that filter, which means you'll be more socially aware. They have social awareness. So you've done self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. Once you're socially aware, you build better relationships, you make better decisions, And those are literally the 5 tenets of social and emotional learning.
Intelligence, yeah, absolutely.
So it's just that it's innately just this, but to get to being confident, which I feel that I think most parents I speak to, majority of them want their kids to be confident.
Yep.
They want them to be confident, they want them to be clear, and they want them to be responsible. And responsible is an interesting one, because we don't talk about that enough. It suddenly feels like a thing to say, because we all grew up saying be more responsible, but I feel being more responsible is that you know what you're supposed to do, and you're doing things for the right reasons, but also not doing it just for yourself. You're doing it for people around you.
Right.
And most parents struggle. I want my kid to be more confident. But the only way they can be more confident is if they first learn not to judge themselves, not worry about other people's judgment, have some level of trust on themselves. If you trust your own abilities, you're more confident.
Yeah. Is that what you hear?
Yeah.
You say, I want my kid to be...
I want my kid to be more confident. If I had to pick like top 3 things that parents worry about.
Where is that coming from? Do they see like lack of confidence as a
most parents today, I feel, see their kids by virtue of social media and the screens as well. They find them to be less social and hence less confident.
Got it.
Kids prefer the screen or prefer to do that rather than be out there, play a sport, do something, right? It feels like they're a lot more within themselves than out there.
Right.
I feel the pandemic also did that to an entire generation of kids, because they grew up without those few years where they could really go out there.
Yes.
So parents really worry about that. What I'm also seeing is parents want kids to be well-rounded. They want them to be fully developed, but they also want to make sure that what they're developing towards needs to be tangible and should also have it shouldn't be make them average.
Right.
Like, you learning this, you have to be really good at it.
Great at it, right?
Yeah. You want to do drama school. Great. Be really good at it. Don't be average. Which I think is fair. None of us want our kids to be average.
Sure.
And it's not about pressure. It's about telling them that you've made this decision. Now you're not coasting. Now you got to do this well. So it doesn't matter what.
Yeah, so how do you persevere?
Yeah. So again, confidence, and again that also comes from confidence, trust, right? Because trust. So look at the confidence loop. The more you trust your own abilities, the more confidence you have. And the only way you will trust your own abilities is if you actually show that you've practiced and you've done enough. So
right.
Innately that is where it comes from.
Got it.
The third thing is just that while every parent says, I want my kid to be happy, I feel they want their kid to be happy in a way that they're more resilient, because they don't want something to happen to them that they can't deal with.
Right.
So I need my kid to, what they say, I want my kid to be tough, is actually I want my kid to be resilient.
Right.
So they can deal with whatever the world throws at
them. Yeah.
And that thing, that especially in today's world, I think that's the most important thing, right? Because things change so quickly that if a kid's not resilient, it's a very tough world to grow up in. I'm very happy I grew up without social media.
No, absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge monster. Yeah. Now shifting to another lens again, I'm continuing on the theme of dads here, and relating to how they're taking care of themselves, right? Being aware of what's happening. Yeah. I see a lot of men struggling, right? Dads struggling, particularly in coming to terms with their emotional health, their own balance. And I'm very curious about that. Yeah. How do you see men, carving out, being intentional about taking care of themselves? Particularly, I think we are good at looking at our physical health. A lot of us, not everyone. Yeah. But the emotional part, the mental part, is still we are a little behind in first acceptance, and then working on it, addressing it.
Yeah. I was reading about this entire epidemic of what's going through with young men and men in general, right?
Right.
Is that the role of the man in the world has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And
how so?
Because you saw a few things happen. You've had a lot more equality come in. You've had a lot of globalization come in. So suddenly what was perceived to be the role of the man is no longer just the role of the man. I think that's a good thing, right? We've had women take up more leadership roles. We've had women really get the opportunities they should have always gotten.
Right.
You've also had scenarios where you have all genders kind of have certain, some level of upliftment. And upliftment's maybe not the right word.
It's a grand word.
More obvious. I'd say been given more opportunity, which they should have always been given. But a lot of that has happened in a scenario where you haven't defined what the role of the man is anymore. Okay, you were told you were the provider, but now you're not the only person providing.
Yep.
You were told you were the strong one, but you're no longer the only. You don't have to be the only. You don't have to be has become a thing, right? So for many men, they're trying to find that spot of what it is. For many of them, they're on cruise control and doing what they were told a man should do. But I also feel I'm seeing more and more men being more lonely.
Right.
Because
that's where my question's coming from.
It's a lot more lonely. I think today's man is a lot more lonely than before because...
Can I ask, how do you see that? Is it coming from like your friends or some kind of a...
So what I tend to do is that every once in a while I'll just drop a question box on Instagram or I'll drop something, in one of the broadcast lists. And I say, do you have any questions you can send? I say, if you want, you can just DM them to me. And I've seen so many questions. I have a lot of moms who will have questions. I'll have a lot of young people who have questions. But I also have a lot of men who have innate questions of just generally, I don't have friends. I'm worried about being judged. If I expressed my emotions once and my parents laughed at me. Forget my friends laughed at me. My parents laughed at me. They said, why are you doing this? Right, laughed at me. And innately, I feel men having friends is very different from women having friends.
Right.
Because we don't share as much. You meet a bunch of guy friends, you are cracking jokes at each other, talking about most random, inane things and going back, right? I have the same set of guy friends since I was in college and we talk about the same things even now.
Right. We're just talking about this in another context.
But you got to add a layer where somebody steps up. And that actually happened with me and my friends. We were all in college together. We all came to Bombay together.
To date? Like you hang with...
Yeah. That is my closest set of guy friends.
That's cool.
We all came to Bombay together in 2005, 2006. We all came to Bombay together up from college, different parts of the media industry. Do we meet every week? No. Do we meet every month? Sometimes no. But we have these, thankfully, 2 WhatsApp groups and Instagram chats with constant memes and stuff being shared. But when we do meet, while 90% of the time it's about random stuff and pulling each other's leg, and you always have one person who's the butt of all jokes. Every once in a while, when someone's going through something, I have seen more and more in recent times that someone will step up and say, do you want to talk about this? So a friend of mine was going through a very bad mental health crisis. So a couple of us spoke to his wife and with her permission and his permission, went and spoke to his therapist and saying, what can we as friends do
to support this?
To support him.
Yep.
It felt very alien. We also had, you still have the jokes, you still have all that stuff, right? It's not like suddenly became serious. Like we were literally like, can we still make fun of him? We literally asked the therapist, can we still make fun of him? But we also asked, how can we support him? We've had scenarios where, someone's had to quit drinking alcohol. So like, automatically someone's missing. Should we just all meet for
Someone had to or they decided to?
Someone had to quit alcohol because of medical reasons, right? They want some medication saying you can't drink for 6 months to a year. So we're like, let's meet for a cup of coffee. What did we in the past? Now it's like, I'm seeing this happen, but I would say I'm grateful because I have friends like that.
It's not representative of the world.
In most cases, these are things you're supposed to deal with yourself because men don't express. And I feel that's the thing. What eats away most men is the inability to get themselves to express their emotions. And because they can't express their emotions, they hold it all in. And it's like slow cancer. It kind of eats away at them slowly.
Yeah.
And they also don't have ways to deal with it, which isn't even like talking to someone. Like writing a journal is a way to express yourself without worry of judgment, right?
I was actually listening to a podcast when this man, right, told the podcast interviewer that he was struggling with this and he just started talking to ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And he would just get a response. But he said, I had the license and permission to say whatever I wanted to say or I couldn't say to anybody else.
And that's what, why you're seeing the rise of this one kind of AI agent, which is an AI girlfriend. Right?
Yeah.
That's one of the rising things, is that I just want someone to talk to.
It's like the Her movie.
Yeah, I think, and that's already happening. Right? It's already happening in real life. Eerily enough, the movie just came sometime back. And that's happening more and more. But
so going back to the topic of loneliness.
It comes down to that. So you're lonely because you can't express yourself. You're worried. I think the fear of, one of the best books on shame is a book called there's one called Daring Greatly. Actually, any book by Brené Brown.
Daring Greatly.
There's Daring Greatly and The Gifts of Imperfection. Actually, The Gifts of Imperfection teaches you about shame so much more. And in Gifts of Imperfection, Brené Brown says that what she realized was shame mean different things for women and men.
Mm-hmm.
Shame for women is a lot more on physical appearance, how are you looking, etc. Shame for men is like it's built on their worth.
And where are they drawing their worth from?
Do I have self-worth, right?
Yeah.
Am I needed? Am I doing something? Is what
am
I'm
I
doing,
achieving something?
Am I achieving something? Is something I'm doing have value? And the day you take that away from a man, that is where they really go down towards the shame loop. And once you're down in that shame loop, and then judgment, and then you could be with a bunch of friends, you're still lonely.
Yeah.
And I feel the only way to kind of cross beyond that is to tell men that give men the tools to be able to deal with this, where they don't feel judged. Which is why I always say, if you can do therapy, if you can't journal, find methods for you to deal with things. So I'm someone who has has sporadic panic attacks, anxiety, and I was doing therapy, and I'm like, I can't always go to therapy when I have it. But I'm a fidgeter. Fidgeting helps me. So I always carry a pair of beads in my pocket. So I always have these beads. I'd ask my mom to buy me beads. So it's not about I'm not doing prayer, none of that stuff. I just need something to fidget. So if I don't have it in my pocket, I'll just fiddle with it for a few minutes, and that will just take my focus away from that feeling at that time. Journaling's helped me have a better conversation with myself. And the more you journal, you realize that you start off by trying to impress somebody who might read it.
Yeah.
And you progress to having a conversation with yourself. And I feel most men, and even and when I'm digging deeper into fathers, don't talk about the experience of being men and being fathers.
Being fathers, no?
Yeah. Whenever I hear about a friend of mine or someone I know even like reasonably going to become a father, I take them out for lunch. And I say, this is how your life is going to be. You will not know how things are going to go the first 3 months because you don't know what your role is. You'll be like, what has just happened? And you'll try to find a spot for yourself. When a kid's 6 months, suddenly they start reacting to you and your world will change. But realize that don't look at this as taking away from your life. Just look at this as now your life has changed. And doesn't mean you take away the focus from yourself. I think the worry is, my life is no longer about
myself, right?
I've lost my individuality. My life is no longer mine. But the day you realize that only when you take care of yourself can you take care of your child.
Yep.
Only when, like, my kids see me as an active person. My kids made me want to be fitter. And
yeah.
I have 2 kids who are 15 kgs and above, and I can carry 2, dumbbells which are 30 kgs. So for me, I'm like, I've got time. I can still carry them in one hand, right? So for me, that, and not get lower back pain. So my defining factor for being fit was this. And I tell them, I'm doing this so I can carry you and not get lower back pain in Disneyland. Right? That is literally
my thing to my daughter is my worst day, the saddest day of my life is the day when I won't be able to carry you anymore.
Yeah.
It will happen, but that'll be the saddest day.
I'm not going to let that happen. And it's just that if you are, and I feel your kids can be a great outlet for you to talk about how things are going for you.
Yeah.
There's a line, I think beyond oversharing also is a bad thing for a kid. Kids aren't.
They're only capable of processing so much.
And also they don't need some of the things
right.
Right?
Some of the shit that you.
But if they see you as real, then you taken one part of that shame away, right? You're like, my kids see me as real. My kids aren't judging me.
Yeah.
My partner isn't judging me, and that suddenly takes away part of that pressure. But you have to have a set of friends you can just be open with. Like, I feel that I talk to a lot of my friends about so many things. Sometimes it's a one-on-one that works better.
Yeah.
Sometimes a group that works better. Whenever I'm going through a tough time, I'll call up one of my friends, just have a chat. I have a few really close friends, even some I've made after I've come to Bombay as well, who I'll just call saying, this is what I was going through. And sometimes I just listen.
I need to do more of that, and I'm in a break now in the last few months, and I'm just flipping back to your point on therapy and journaling, because I want to shine a light on that.
Yeah.
Because I've had my own evolution into that. I mean, I did therapy beforehand as well, not the recent 6 months. And I would, my tendency would be to go into a therapy once, twice, and then I'll just prove that it's not working. That would be my game plan.
Yeah.
And I'll say, oh, it didn't work. Look what happened. I knew it was not going to work. And I did that like thrice.
Yeah.
The last 6 months, because I had more time, I did, and nothing magical happened in the sect. Like, the thing is, you go there expecting, man, I'm going to come out like transformed. Nothing happened. Nothing happened.
You are basically talking to someone in a judgment-free zone. That's all you get.
It.
Therapy is just that.
That's it.
I'm going in without the fear of being judged, because I have actually paid someone to listen to me talk.
Right. And that realization happened to me like a few months back. And I'm looking at it in a very different way. And I think that's another stigma.
Yeah.
I don't know about women. Me being a man, I know I had that stigma in my head.
Yeah.
And I had to overcome it just through real struggles.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that I want to share.
There's an interesting thing I read the other day, and I was like, so that you realize that people always didn't have therapy, but they had things they would do together. There were community activities.
Right.
Today, what do? We get up in the morning. If we even go to the gym or something like that, we just do that ourselves, and then we go to work, and then we come back home and scroll on our phones and watch something on Netflix, and we go to sleep.
So you built your own bubble.
Think about retirement homes, right? What do retirement homes have? They have they'll have some kind of a game everybody plays together.
Yeah.
And they've actually studied what kinds of games or sports or community activities really drive this, taking away this feeling of loneliness, making you feel better, almost equivalent to therapy, racket sports. So you're playing tennis, you're playing pickleball, you're playing badminton. So those activities make you feel less lonely. You build community and friends. And so just playing a sport is not about winning and losing like we all learned when we were kids.
Right.
Playing a sport is you building community, is you finding friends, and you're all gravitating towards a shared interest. So you're not together for work reasons.
There's also a no judgment zone as well, right? Because everyone's...
Yeah. So play a sport with a set of people you meet on a regular basis. That actually shows that you will live far longer than you would if you didn't, because you'll be healthier mentally and physically. But you also make friends. So if you want to make friends, find a group activity you can do which involves physical activity.
Yeah.
And I feel that's when you see all these people playing pickleball and paddle, which is everywhere now. I think people have found a community sport which doesn't feel like high pressure.
Right.
And they get to do it. And I'm suddenly seeing people who would be out drinking every second night, not drinking because I'll wake up in the morning and play paddle at 6 in the morning, or like go play pickleball here. And it's become like this, like go play badminton. So if you actually do, and I don't do that. And I'm conscious to pick up one of those. I want to do it because I've always been very individual.
Right.
The gym, I'll go for a run, very individual focused on this. Again, I'm a person who's lived my entire life worried about being judged and being a people pleaser. So I've now understood that. I'm like, I have to pick up a sport.
Take some steps.
Where I know
to go to the arena.
I know I will be an amateur at best when I start, but I will go in because I know it will help me in the long term. So in that, if you can't do therapy, just go play badminton, go play like pickleball, whatever works for you, and that will just help. I think again that's one more, and it's not a gender thing, but I feel that really helps men cross that boundary.
Correct. Overcome that.
Yeah, because you will find people you will really resonate with.
And the journaling part, thanks. I couldn't agree more with that. I think, but important part is that you try to be real in that friendship, right?
Yeah.
And not go back to winning, losing, and stuff like that. Journaling is another thing that you touched on.
Yeah.
How did you come to that? Has it been a long?
So I've always written, but I think I used to write. I went through a phase when when you're younger and you want to write and you've had a couple of drinks and you sit and write something, think it's very profound, and you later wake up in the morning and realize that was really bad. I went through that phase in my 20s, and then to 30s I hardly wrote. I just started journaling I'm trying to think of when. I discovered Stoicism 2018, 2019. It helped me a lot during the early days of the pandemic and still continues to be something. I picked up a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and that really was, I mean, you're literally reading the journal of almost like the emperor of the world at that time.
Right.
And this man is wake up in the morning and talking about that, the sheets feel nice and warm, but you have to get up and do a man's work. He's almost pushing himself to get out of bed. We all do. Everybody in the world relates to that. It's cozy. You need to get up.
This myth that I'm jump out of the bed because I'm so excited about the work.
I have this thing vibrate in my hand every morning to wake me up at 5:30 a.m. And he writes about things like people are going to be mean and abusive towards you, but you can't control that. And all you can control is how you behave and how you think. And I was like, this is very insightful, and he never wrote it for it to be read, but it's he was just giving himself reminders on a daily basis. So what I actually do is I just woke up one day and I said I will, and I did what everybody does. You watch 50 YouTube videos on journaling, you get very confused. Right. You buy 4 journals, you don't use any of them for more than 1 or 2 pages. And one day I woke up and took a normal empty notebook and I just started writing. I said I will write a page, half a page every single day. I've done that for years, but I'll have like days when I don't write.
Sure.
But I've kept that for a long time, and that's been great. Just get stuff out of your head in the morning. Sometimes you feel like writing it at night. So before I go to bed, I'll make a cup of like tea and I'll sit and write that and go to bed. And
how has it helped you?
It gets rid of the gunk out. I feel more than anything else, you'll have stuff stuck in your head.
Yeah.
You do 2 things. One is you're getting stuff out of your head which you want out of your head. So you're putting it down on paper, so you feel like you got a release.
It's out.
Really angry with somebody, writing that down, saying, this is why I'm angry with them. This is what I'm feeling like, and just put it down there. And then you're like, okay, it's out. There's some part of it that's going to come out. Or you want to really push something in your head. Like for me, it was literally like one day I read something and I was like stuck in my head the entire night while sleeping. And I woke up in the morning and the first thing I wrote is, always remind yourself that people don't have to understand you, because
you're stuck in that
always
place.
Stuck. People pleaser, right? Grew up like everyone needs to be like me, happy with me. So here's why I'm doing this. Here's why I'm like that. I'm like, I don't want to explain myself to anybody. As long as those closest to me have a clear picture of what I'm doing, and unless they ask me, and then I'll explain. But they don't have to like why I'm doing things. They don't even need to understand it.
Yeah.
As long as I'm not doing anything to harm anyone or harm myself. I wrote that, and that's again restating it. And I know I've written that line at least 10, 15 times over different days in different forms. It comes back, right? People don't have to understand you.
I'll try doing that.
Yeah. Because we all try to put ourselves in that box.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going back to the same thing, right? Is that if our kids see us not wanting to put ourselves in a box, they won't want to put themselves in a box. My daughter loves art and math. I am so excited with that combination, because you were always told there is science, commerce, arts. Now I'm like, art and math. I'm like, that is amazing.
Yeah.
I wish I could
I think kids will have these combinations that just breaks the silos.
Yeah. I grew up in a family of doctors, and the reason I didn't become a doctor is I didn't think I'd want to be one. But today when I think about it, the thing which excites me the most is to read stuff around emotions, psychology.
Yeah.
My dad had this funny thing to say when I finished the Stanford course, and he's like, see, you had some interest in this area. I'm like, maybe I just didn't pick the right thing.
Right. That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's just a dad thing to say. See, you could have been a doctor. I'm like, maybe not. But close enough is what I said. But it's just that. You have to, it's just reminding yourself of things. It's a release format, and there is this tactileness to it. And again, it's not about typing it out. All these app journals I don't think work, because there is something to a pen or a pencil on a piece of paper and you writing it down. Something happens.
Something releasing about it.
Yeah. Because it's physical, right? It's a physical activity happening.
Yeah.
Or you're just going for a walk with no devices. Just walk. Don't have to run.
That's what I do these days.
Yeah, walk is great.
I don't listen or anything. I just walk.
Because we tend to overdo ourselves. Yeah. Put on an audio book. I will time
I
my
learn
walk
something.
and everything.
Yeah.
Then you're focusing on all that. You haven't finished it, and you haven't gotten the essence of it.
Right. Absolutely. Well, you give a lot of tips. I wanted to touch on these aspects because I think these aspects are, to your point, circling back on you hearing from all the men.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that we are more comfortable with these tools, because otherwise we'll continue to be lonely. Right?
My biggest, I feel you need to start one thing. Are you part of any dad groups on WhatsApp?
Not really.
So I have learned.
I have friends, like small friends.
But I have learned that mom WhatsApp groups are a great way in which they build community.
Source. Yeah, they do.
Mom WhatsApp groups are on it. They are messaging all the time. I need this help at 1 a.m. in the night on a mom WhatsApp group, and the other moms are diving in. Oh, this is what you should do. Dad WhatsApp groups. I am a part of about 2-3 of them. There is one message every year on Father's Day saying Happy Father's Day, which everybody will thumbs up, and you're done. Right? I feel if we just change that one thing, can we have dad WhatsApp groups? Maybe I should just start one.
And more importantly, not just have jokes in there.
That's what and not good morning messages. No, actually like help each other. Like this is what I'm
dealing with.
Or like it doesn't even have to be like a heavy thing. It can be like I'm trying to find the right tennis class for my kid. Right? I'm trying to find the right football class. I actually asked about a football class. Actually asked another dad. But thankfully I knew his son goes for it. I messaged him. I'm like, my son wants to football. Where do I take him? He's 2 years old, but he wants to play. And he's like, go to this club. And I went there, right?
There you go.
And he gave me options and stuff. And meantime, I think Pooja also found the same solution through another friend. But it's just that even it's just asking each other those things. But are we okay to be part of a group seeing that? I feel we're okay sometimes to say it one-on-one. My biggest thing is that can there be a father's WhatsApp group where we're not judging each other and also not shying away from sharing?
Or not bragging about what we've done.
Yes. Guys, this is what I've done.
Good stuff. Well, I think we are winding down, Varun. It's been phenomenal, as always.
It's been a lot of fun.
I hope we continue to do this.
Yes.
We'll wrap with, I think I might have asked you the last time round, but I know we all evolve. How do you describe fatherhood now?
How do I describe fatherhood? Fatherhood for me is... it's actually a tough one. I think the last time I said it much faster. I think, this time it's a lot longer. I think I've spent way too much time with the science to kind of...
I know.
And also we're having a second kid and a much... I feel fatherhood for me is about just being there when your kid needs you. That's all it is. Your kids don't need you all the time, but when they need you, they should be able to turn around and say, okay, my dad's here. For me, that's what fatherhood is. It's just that. Are you that, constant, I won't even say support.
Yeah.
Are you dependable? When I really need you, were you there? Is all kids need. So for me, it's that. Can I always be that to my kids and ensure that I'm always that, physically, emotionally, anything, financially, all of that parts. And so as long as I'm that, for me, that I'm a good father. I'm dependable.
Thanks for sharing that. It really, I was thinking as you're narrating this, a lot of adults, when you ask them about their dads or moms, particularly more so dads, the way they'll respond is, my dad was there.
Yeah.
That's one thing that they'll say. Or he wasn't there.
Yeah.
It's very well put. It's well put.
Yeah. Because your kids also, there's this, I don't know if you've seen this Jerry Seinfeld clip.
I may or not.
So Jerry Seinfeld said this about being a father. He said, people say quality time. He said, I believe in garbage time.
Yeah.
Your kids also want you to do really stupid, silly things.
Stuff,
but that's also you being there. You being there when they want to be silly, right?
Yeah.
Like my kids and I do this every night. We do some random stuff before they go to bed. But it's fun. Like my daughter's trying to teach me how to hula hoop. Okay, I'm terrible at it. And she's laughing. She's on the floor with me trying to hula hoop on this thing and doing that.
It's very hard. I've tried it.
But it's like, it's fun for her. She's laughing. I'm like, I'll do this silly stuff with you.
There you go. Well, thanks, Varun. Thanks for spending this Saturday afternoon.
No, thank you so much for having me.
It's a blast.
Great conversation.
Good luck with the stuff that you're doing. It's a big, big mission for the world, and more power to you.